Good evening. We're on week 8 of Being With. I'm glad you've joined us again, and we're going to continue the series by looking at the eighth topic tonight, which is the topic of prayer. Now, prayer sometimes can be a very tired and traditional concept for people. They struggle with it, but I hope that what Sam has prepared tonight will be sufficiently interesting and innovative that it can help you to have your thoughts about prayer and your practice of prayer refreshed and enriched. And again, on Sam's advice, because this is a very tightly argued section tonight, I'm going to read the text itself rather than paraphrase. So here goes. I want to describe 4 parts of a conversation you might have with someone from a different place in society to yourself. Here are the 4 parts of the conversation. Tell me about the ways in which you are rich. Tell me about the ways in which you are poor. Let me tell you about the ways in which I am poor. Let me tell you about the ways in which I am rich. Maybe the conversation might go something like this. You'd say, tell me about the ways in which you are rich. And your friend might say, I appreciate the way you see me for what I am, and not just for what I'm not. My childhood was difficult, but I feel rich in the variety of people my parents brought into my life. My education wasn't very successful, but I feel rich in the way I learned to read people and look into their hearts. I feel rich in the wonder of the birds and their song, and the dawn and its beauty, and the pouring rain and its refreshment. I've never had much money, but I have a wealth of friends, and somehow there's always been someone who stepped out of the shadows to help me when I couldn't manage everything myself. And then maybe you'd say, tell me about the ways in which you are poor. And your friend might say, you're probably expecting me to talk about how I can't pay the rent and can't find a job. But the real way in which I feel poor is when I see a person who's a lot worse off than me, and I feel powerless to help them. The real times I feel poor are when I see a newcomer to this country trying to make their way, and I can't speak enough of their language to be of much use to them. The real times I feel poor are when I think of my daughter who died when she was just 2 and I was just 19, and I miss her with more sadness than I have in my whole heart. And then maybe you'd say, may I tell you about the ways in which I am poor? And your friend might say, I'd never thought of someone like you as poor. And you might say, I felt I had to apologize for being a girl. All my life I've struggled with envy. I've always hated my brother, even though I've never told him, and anyone would think we were the best of friends. I wonder if I've ever trusted anyone enough to show them who I really am. But I'm also rich. I've always had the ability to concentrate. I can listen or read or be silent and pray for hours. And I can paint. I can paint a watercolor. I can paint a miniature. I can paint a wall. I can paint a face. I can paint anything and make it laugh and dance and spring to life. I share my heart through my paintbrush. When the 2 of you have shared your wealth and your poverty with one another in this way, you may want to leave it there, but you may choose to go a little further. Your friend may say to you, let me tell you about how you're rich. You're rich because you don't have to spend every waking moment of your day earning money. So you've got time to be beautiful, to do beautiful things and walk with people who are in trouble. And let me tell you how you're poor. You're poor because you've never found a way in which to love your brother. You're poor because you don't have enough people like me around to tell you the truth about yourself. And then, ever so tentatively, you might find the courage to say to your friend, you're rich because your laugh is infectious and exciting. You're rich because every child who ever met you loves you. You're rich because you've already been through the worst that life can bring, so you live without fear. But you're also poor You're poor because you're deeply hungry to do something really useful for others, but you can't find a way to do it. If you have the first kind of interaction, that's called a conversation. But if you have the second kind of interaction, where you talk about each other, that's more than a conversation. That's called a real relationship. Poverty is a mask we put on a person to cover up their real wealth. And wealth is a disguise we put on a person to hide their true poverty. Those we call the rich are those in whom we choose to see the wealth, but are more reluctant to see the deep poverty. Those we call the poor are those in whom we choose to see the hunger, but are slower to see the profound riches. God takes that in each of us that is rich and sees through it to our poverty. And God takes our poverty and sees past it to our deeper riches. And every day we enact these words before God. We think of our neighbour in person, society, and globe, and we think about their wealth. And we think of the wonder of God's universe, and we call that praise. We think of our neighbour in their poverty and all that's wrong in the world, and we call that intercession. We think of ourselves in our poverty and everything we could have done in our life. We could have done differently, and we call that confession. We think of ourselves in our riches and all the blessings of our life, and we call that thanksgiving. These are the 4 parts of prayer: praise, intercession, confession, thanksgiving. The riches of the world, the poverty of the world, the poverty of ourselves, the riches of ourselves. These are the ways we make that courageous, intimate conversation a daily act of renewal. So have that conversation with someone this week. Make it the time you remember that Christ left his wealth and took on your poverty, that he might make you wealthy in the way that he is wealthy. Make it the time you discover another's poverty and another's wealth, and redefine your own wealth and your own poverty. Have that sacred conversation with one other person this week. But have that conversation with God every day, for that's what prayer is. Prayer is when we see God's wealth and God's poverty and bring to God our poverty and wealth, and our neighbours too. That's a daily conversation in which our friendships, our lives, and our world are being transformed. May you find that an interesting and innovative, perhaps a new take on the practice of prayer and your understanding of it. And if you have further questions about that, do please get in touch. I'll be glad to respond as and when I can. Thanks for listening, and next week we look at the 9th in our series of Being With, and that will be the subject of suffering, which connects with what we've been looking at tonight on prayer. Thanks for listening.